We respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we work and learn, and pay respect to the First Nations peoples and their elders past, present, and future. We're recording on Gadigal land. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
G'day and thanks for checking out another season of Rewind. I'm your host Steve Bell. This time around we're travelling back to the year 1990 and the release of the debut album by a hitherto unknown Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander singer-songwriter, one who was about to triumph over adversity as he embarked on a 30-plus year career entertaining and schooling generations of Australian music fans. The artist is the much-loved Archie Roach. The record is the classic Charcoal Lane, and this is the story.
Albert and Archie painted not so much the things he sold, but what he felt inside and how he loved the Flinders Rain. The only thing he ever wanted, the reason that he painted for, was that everybody shared the dream. His land would never change.
Today Archie Roach is a giant of the Australian music scene. He's toured the world spreading his uplifting and thought-provoking truth, along the way sharing stages with Bob Dylan, Patti Smith, Billy Bragg, Suzanne Vega and countless more big names. He's been inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame. He's a member of the Order of Australia for his lifetime contribution to Indigenous arts and culture. In 2020, he was the Victorian State recipient of the Australian of the Year Award. He's won ARIAs. He's won a Deadly Award for lifetime contribution to healing the stolen generations. The list goes on. Archie is a musician, an activist, a healer, a massive and much-loved figure in the Australian cultural landscape. But 30 years ago, this road that Archie has travelled with such strength, humility and dignity seemed a long, long way off. In fact, so high are the hurdles he's faced along the journey that in some ways it's incredible he even made it at all. Archibald William Roach was born in Mooroopna, near Shepparton, in January 1956. His mum Nellie, a Gunditjmara woman from southwestern Victoria, and his dad Archie, a Bundjalung man from the northern rivers of New South Wales. At a very young age, he and his family relocated to Framlingham Aboriginal Mission near Warrnambool, down where his mum had been born. But sadly, and from a broader perspective shamefully, Archie never knew any of this until he was a lot older. Never knew his blood family, his own connection to country, where he fit in the world. At the age of 2, far before he had any agency in his future, Archie, along with his sisters, was forcibly taken from his family by Australian government agencies and placed in an orphanage. An orphanage, despite having 2 perfectly functional parents who loved him dearly. But this wasn't about them. Anyone with even an ounce of empathy or compassion knows that this was an horrendously misguided initiative removing generations of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their biological families and cultures. But it wasn't until reading Archie's phenomenal 2019 autobiography, Tell Me Why, that I began to even vaguely fathom the magnitude of pain and suffering experienced by both the children and the parents affected by the stolen generations, and how the effects of this callous displacement is still reverberating down the line today into future generations. Of course, young Archie wasn't aware of any of this, not privy to that most important of information. Separated from his sisters, Archie was placed in a couple of foster homes early, at least one of which left him traumatised by the mistreatment he experienced, until he was eventually fostered by the Coxes, a family of Scottish immigrants living in Melbourne. They say ignorance is bliss, and the next decade or so was pretty uneventful in Archie's life, a relatively typical Australian 60s upbringing. The Coxes showed a lot of love to Archie and treated him as a member of their family, and in return he loved them back. Even better, they were a musical family. His foster sister Mary taught Archie the basics of guitar and keyboards. His foster dad Alex bought Archie his first guitar, and each week they'd sing with gusto in church on Sundays. Music was always around, and Archie was always drawn to it, and also very adept at it from the outset. But one otherwise normal day, when Archie was 15 and a student at Lilydale High School, a letter arrived which would completely throw the youngster's world off its axis. Sitting in his high school English class, a message came over the PA, "Could Archibald William Roach come to the office, please?" Now Archie was going by Archie Cox at this point, but instinctively knew that it was him being summoned, and when he went and received the brief letter, it was from his birth sister Myrtle, telling him that his mum Nellie had passed away the week before, but also informing him in the process that he in fact had 4 sisters and 2 brothers. Despite the unconditional love he'd received from the Coxes, immediately Archie knew that he didn't belong there anymore, that this was a charade, not his proper family. So he up and left, went searching for his sister Myrtle. In the pre-internet days, all he had was an address in Sydney, as well as trying to find the rest of his family that he'd only just discovered he had. More importantly, Archie's quest was to find himself, where he fit in, where he belonged. For the next 15 years, Archie's life was a transient one, a life, sadly as with so many other victims of the stolen generations, defined by displacement, which manifested in homelessness and alcoholism. For a while in his nomadic quest, he didn't belong anywhere, his life a blur of systemic racism, police harassment, stints in the lockup, and a slow cycle of neglect which pointed irrevocably towards oblivion. It wasn't all bad, of course. Although Archie never got to meet his parents, he gradually one by one reunited with most of his brothers and sisters and started piecing together his own background and origins. There were tons of friends and a strong sense of community, and at one juncture, following the toss of a coin, he washed up in Adelaide, where he would meet young Nurrunjeri woman Ruby Hunter, his future wife and soulmate. But the years of drinking took its toll both mentally and physically, and we came perilously close to losing Archie a couple of times, until his love for Ruby, and her boundless love for him, and the fact that they'd started a family together, was enough for Archie to break the cycle and beat the bottle, embracing sobriety to ensure that he had a future with this family that he'd fought so hard to find and foster. But one thing that had always been there for Archie in good times and bad was music. That love of the form had stayed with him on the road and through his travels, whether in the shape of jukebox and campfire sing-alongs or strumming guitars with his mates in the park. Archie learnt early that if you haven't got 2 coins to rub together, if you know how to sing and know a few good tunes, then you've always got entertainment at hand, and for Archie, music proved a crutch throughout his entire life.
Yeah, since way back, it's been a blessing. Music, through all things, being removed and going to different foster families. There's always been this one thing in my life that it's been. I think that it's really, but it's helped in a way to keep, help to I suppose to deal with whatever it was that was going on, and music was there, and I just embraced it.
A pivotal moment in young Archie's musical journey, one he tells so eloquently in his book Tell Me Why, was inadvertently being introduced to US country pioneer Hank Williams in church of all places. This didn't just instill in him a lifelong love of country music, but it made him realise that he wanted to play guitar and sing.
I started playing keyboard first, believe it or not, and was in church one time. This little Pentecostal church that I started going to when I was going to high school, and this woman got up and got a verse from the Bible, but sang it to the Hank Williams song, "You're Cheating Hard," and I don't know, just looking at her, listening to her, and the conviction of the sincerity that she had in her singing just blew me away, and I thought, yeah, that's what I want to do, to play guitar and sing a song But that's what I a Hank Williams tune. She said that's what she said. So Hank Williams, because I asked her after the meeting that day, I said, uh, what you sang before in the service, it was beautiful. And she said, yeah, it's a passage from the Bible, but I sung it to a Hank Williams tune. I said, Hank Williams, who's that? And she said, you haven't heard of Hank Williams? I said, no. She said, oh, well, it was Hank Williams' tune called "You're Cheating Hard." If you can get a hold of Hank Williams, I suggest you have a listen to his music. Like I did not long after it, yeah.
And soon you were drawn to lots of that sort of sad country like Charlie Pride and Merle Haggard and Woody Guthrie, even. I guess that's folk, but you enjoyed those artists?
Well, Woody Guthrie, yeah, it's so, but he had a sort of country way of singing and playing. And like like what was the one about the refugee?
Oh,
So
yeah.
long, to my wife, so long, Rosalita. Very very country song, really. When you listen to that, Adios, Miss Amigo, Jose and Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. Or they'll call you a big refugee. And I just thought he was great songwriter and his social commentary. But of course, listen to the songs of Merle Haggard, Charlie Pride, and people like that. And Hank Williams especially had this plaintive way of singing, and his songs always dealt with heartache or something like that. So yeah, it drew me in for some reason. I thought it was great music to listen to.
In those years on the streets before you started your career, being able to play and sing though was still really important, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think on the street, if I had my guitar whenever I could, if I didn't hock it, if it wasn't in hock, it just became another companion or something else to keep you, I don't know, sane, I suppose, was one of the better word, I think, just to keep you grounded or just to keep you right, And if you could pick up a guitar and play a tune, no matter what was going on, you might be homeless, you might be a drunk, but, you can sing a song, and that helped a lot.
Archie had always been a dab hand at playing and interpreting other people's songs, but there was an unintended consequence of his sobriety when the drinking stopped. Suddenly his own songs were pouring out of him at a rate of knots.
Well, that's what. Not long after that, really. I started writing songs about, first couple of songs were basically country songs, getting drunk, falling in love and getting drunk, falling out of love and getting drunk again. But it wasn't until my Uncle Banjo Clark from where I was taken from as a child in southwest Victoria, come up to me and said, "Oh, I heard I was writing songs," and asked me to write. He said, "Why don't you write a song about when you was taken away?" And I said, "I don't remember much about that. I was only about 2 or 3." He said, "Yeah, but I do." So we sat down and listened to him, told a yarn about it, and that's when I wrote "Took the Children Away," and that was the beginning of writing a lot of songs then about my own songs about it was come up to around 1988, the bicentennial, and I started to write a lot of songs. Also, yeah, protesting, I think, about things that have happened in my life and my people's lives. Yeah.
You'd always loved words and poetry.
Yeah.
So I guess it's natural that these amazing songs, like you just had such an incredible way with words from the outset.
Oh, look, I've always loved, I don't know what it was, I just loved words. So English was, not so much the theory, but English going in there, writing poetry or essays was something I loved to do. And I just love to be able to do something with words to try and say something, uh, a little deeper than than what you might read in normal sort of sentence or written prose. Try to explore what words actually meant and how words can, I don't know, transform on a page if used correctly. Yeah.
And used them correctly, Archie did. Soon he was performing regularly and showcasing more and more originals, whether playing solo or with a band featuring Ruby, as we'll later find out, a massive talent in her own right, and other musical mates, playing folk clubs and country festivals, anywhere open to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander musos at the tail end of the 80s. Eventually, in 1987, Archie was asked to record some of his originals by his older cousin Jim Berg, a Gunditjmara elder, to accompany an exhibition of artefacts detailing the history of Aboriginal people in Victoria. He and Ruby having settled in Melbourne after spending years flitting between Victoria and Ruby's traditional home in the Coorong region of South Australia. He recorded the songs at Fitzroy Community Radio Station 3CR, and these recordings became the Koori tape, Archie's first, albeit pretty rough, recordings.
Cousin of mine, Jim, asked me to. He was getting he was setting up a group or within the Melbourne Museum back in the day, part of the Koori Heritage, Aboriginal Heritage, Victorian Aboriginal Heritage Trust. And being in the museum, he had a lot of old photographs and artifacts and just information about Victoria and its Aboriginal people and prior to settlement and after settlement. And I said, oh, okay. He said, that sounds good, Jim. He said, well, I want you to write a song about just so we can play while people are looking at this exhibition. I said, I've got a couple of songs, Jim. And Mum was took the children away, but others as well, like Bicentennial Blues, No Celebration, and songs like that. So we recorded. He said, okay, paid for a recording to go and get them recorded. And in the end, that became the Koori tape. And actually, a couple of the songs from there is what Paul Kelly listened to before we did Charcoal Lane, the album. And he took a couple of tracks off there that we recorded in Charcoal Lane eventually.
Was it strange hearing yourself like recording for the first time and then hearing your own voice and song?
Yeah, weird. I never really did like it at all. I just said, no, is that me? Yeah, I said, no. I don't know, I just thought it sounded strange. You think you've got, you hear yourself in your own head, like when we're talking now, it's completely different when you hear it played back to what you're hearing in your head. And but when I actually heard what it was like singing outside of my own head, I thought, well, that's strange. But you get used to that over the years.
As Archie mentioned, the Koori tape featured the first basic version of Took the Children Away, which was no less moving despite its raw recording.
This story's right, this story's true. I would not tell lies to you, like the promises they did not keep, and how they fenced us in like sheep. Said to us, come take our hand, set us up on mission land, told us to read, to write and pray. Then they took the children away, took the children away, the children away. Snatched from their mother's breast, said this is
Koori tape took its name from the track Koori Koori, a version of which is included on the Creation box set encompassing Archie's first 4 albums. That song finding Archie accompanied by both Ruby and Gunai artist Wayne Thorpe on Didgeridoo.
Brand new day is dawning, and the Koori people rise as healthy little children with happy laughing eyes. Hunters at the ready, they know how it feels to be chasing kangaroo or catching lots of eels. Now it's hard, so hard to live. You just took so much from us, yet we had so much more to give. And Koori, Koori, don't you go away. It's written in the land, so many things you have to say. And Koori, Koori, don't you ever die. There's so much for us to learn together, you and I.
Archie referenced earlier the bicentennial celebrations of 1988, marking 200 years of white settlement in Australia, which drew a lot of Indigenous protesters to Sydney to make a stand on their own behalf, and it was during this time, at a protest gathering at La Perouse, when Archie sang a rendition of Took the Children Away, which not only calmed the factional divides threatening to derail this important show of dissent, but helped place Archie on the musical map. Following the La Perouse performance, Archie was invited to play a set on ABC Radio National program Music Daily, which, in conjunction with him having become a frequent guest on 3CR, in turn earned him an invitation to travel to Sydney to appear on the ABC TV show Blackout, a fledgling program telling First Nation stories and promoting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander music. His performance on Blackout of Took the Children Away would prove another sliding doors moment in Archie's life.
I was working in Fitzroy at the hostel, George Wright Hostel, where a lot of my mates, my old drinker mates, would stay overnight. You know. But anyway, they'd heard me. I was singing songs around on community radio here in Melbourne, Fitzroy, and so they got me up to Sydney. I said, we wanted to sing that song that you're singing down there that you sang on community radio. And I said, oh, okay. Which one exactly? I said, oh, about the children being taken. I said, okay. So I ended up in Sydney doing it Blackout. And I thought that was all okay and everything, but unbeknownst to me, Stephen Connolly, the late, the great Steve Connolly, guitarist for the Messengers and co-producer of Charcoal Lane, along with Paul Kelly, called us on Blackout and told Paul to rang up Paul and said, check out this guy on TV, and that's how that all came about. How and I got to know or got introduced to Paul Kelly. Yeah.
Paul Kelly, a man who needs little introduction in these parts, a giant of the Australian music scene, who would soon play a pivotal part in Archie's musical career, not just in these early days, but as his friend and contemporary over the ensuing decades. Paul recalls being introduced to Archie by another friend, his guitarist in the Messengers, Steve Connolly, who, as Archie just explained, had been blown away by the rendition of Took the Children Away he'd seen on Blackout.
Yeah, I remember very well. Steve Connolly coming to me and saying, "I said, seen this singer Archie Roach. It was on a show called Blackout, TV show, and he said we should get him to play with us." At that time, we were about to do a concert at the Melbourne. Oh, what was it called? Melbourne Concert Hall. It's now called Hamer Hall. Anyway, so the first time that we'd ever played at a venue like that, this is must have been 1990, I think, and so it was a special occasion for us, and we thought maybe we should try and get Archie to come and do the opening set. So we tracked him down. But sorry, it's just to rewind a little bit. The song that Steve saw Archie playing was "They Took the Children Away." So that's what really started it all off. Hearing that song, then we got in touch with Archie, and he agreed to do the show, and that's how it all started.
Was that a risk, inviting an unknown singer-songwriter to open such an important show?
Oh, I didn't think of it like that. I mean, we knew that I think we had the show was selling. I thought we must have been confident the show was going to sell. So it wasn't like we had to get the support act to help sell tickets. We just thought we knew who was good. Then so thought it's going to be, it'll be good. And it was amazing.
These days, Gerard Shalecki is tour director at Frontier Touring, in non-pandemic times responsible for bringing your favourite international bands down under. But back then he was Paul's booking agent at Premier Artists, and he too vividly recalls being dragged by Paul into Archie's orbit. Before long he'd be working very closely with Archie as his booking agent as well.
I guess one of the bigger acts that I was working with and had worked with for some time was Paul Kelly and the Messengers, and I'd worked with Paul since I guess around when Post came out, and then right on through to I think the Comedy Record. But during that time, it was so exciting, so much fun. They were easily one of the best rock and roll bands that I think I've ever seen. They really were the real deal. The whole thing swung beautifully with a great rhythm section. The material, Paul's songs were on another level, particularly to what else was going on around in the scene at that time. And happily, Stevie heard Archie, or saw Archie, I think, on television. I can't recall if it was the radio or the television, but anyway, he's heard Archie sing that song and freaked everyone out. And so happily, they wanted to have Archie come and play with them at the Melbourne Concert Hall. And I guess, from certainly myself and I guess a great bunch of other people, that's where we first encountered what Archie was doing.
That would have been a pretty big, important show at Hamer Hall. Like, is it normal to have someone that no one's ever heard of opening it?
It can be. But if my memory is correct, I think that was Paul's first concert appearance as a headliner from memory. The Messengers were we were doing pub runs, doing large pub, you go on the road for 5 or 6 weeks around the country performing in pubs. And I think that concert hall date was the very first sort of formal concert appearance by him. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. And then, and I think, as we all know, Stevie heard him, Paul heard it, and they were both so enthusiastic about it. It was a complete no-brainer for them to include him on the bill.
So Archie is all of a sudden dragged by virtual strangers from his usual gigs in tiny folk clubs and coffee houses to the relatively lofty heights of the Melbourne Concert Hall, opening for Paul Kelly and the Messengers. And as he quickly found out, this is a different experience altogether on numerous levels for a musician.
It wasn't Hamer Hall, and it was just the Melbourne Concert Hall before they actually called it Hamer Hall. It wasn't Hamer Hall until after that. But so it was all strange and weird to me too. Because going out, we went out on the stage there, do sound check, got there at some ridiculous time, waiting around. I said, gee, how long you got to wait around here even before you do anything? He said, oh, that's just the way it is. I said, okay. I had to get used to that too through the years. But, a lot of this, what we do is waiting. And, so it's about maybe an hour on stage or a bit longer. And you've been there for about 6 hours or something. But yeah, so went out on stage to do a sound check and everything. And it was empty, nobody was there. But I could see it was a big auditorium. And it didn't really hit me until later when I actually went out with a full crowd that was there going to catch Paul in the Messengers.
And backstage that night, Archie would briefly meet his soon-to-be lifelong friend Paul Kelly for the first time in slightly inauspicious circumstances.
I didn't even know who Paul Kelly was, I'm not sure if I'd heard the name, but I was in the green room making a cup of tea and trying to find a few bickies, having a cup of tea. And this little bloke popped his head round the corner and come in, it didn't come all the way into the green room, just standing there. And all dressed in black, curly hair. And he said, oh, you must be Archie. I said, yeah. He said, how'd you go after the sound check? I said, no, it was all right. It sounded good. He said, yeah. He said, well, I might see you later on. I said, okay, no worries. And he walks away. And I thought, because he was dressed in black, all black shirt, black jeans, and you can see he had his nose broken. So I thought, I must be security, because he might have got into a bit of a, might have zigged when he should have zagged, and got it in the nose, from a patron somewhere. And I said, oh, that's security. And he said, well, he's security or one of the bouncers there. Because he looked like, he was like a little scrapper at the time. And it wasn't until later on that night after I'd done my set, after I'd done my songs, and I got off stage, and later on, before I left, I called Paul Connolly the Messengers. I was singing a couple of songs, and I'm looking and said, hey, that's that little bloke I thought was a bouncer. I said, no, that's Paul Kelly. And he started singing these songs, like To Adore and other songs, Bradman. And I said, is that Paul Kelly? That's his music. I said, yeah. He said, I know these songs. And people look at me going, oh, yeah. It's like, who is this guy? I said, well, I know these songs, because nearly back in the day, Paul Kelly's music, nearly every song, or every second or third song on radio, most radio stations in Melbourne anyway, was a Paul Kelly song. And so you grew up with Paul Kelly songs. If you didn't know who the guy was, you certainly knew who the songs were, his songs, and that was like me. I knew his songs, but didn't know him. And I realised, that's Paul Kelly, and we didn't get to meet until later on, about a week or so after that.
Paul also recalls his first backstage interaction with Archie.
He thought I was the bouncer. I know. I remember just going in to say hello to him before he went on. I thought I introduced myself, but he might have missed that. I would have said, oh, hi, I'm Paul. Good luck. Hope it goes well. And but he obviously didn't hear me say my name, or else I forgot to say my name, so he just sort of nodded and then off he went to do his show. And then, like I said, we didn't get to see him afterwards. So we had, a very brief interaction on that night. It was just, hello, good luck. We ended up following up later.
Archie was only allocated a 20-minute opening slot that night, but 20 minutes was all he needed to stun the crowd into silence and leave an indelible mark on all those lucky enough to be in attendance. In fact, he stunned the crowd so much that for a moment he thought he'd completely bombed.
Gosh, so I don't know. I just had my guitar, came out, and saw all these people. And I was a little nervous, I'll have to tell you. You know, and I sang. I think it was "Beautiful Child" first, and then I just sang it and finished singing, and gave it a little nod, or not a bow or anything, just a nod. And silence, crickets. Couldn't hear it, yeah. So I said, "Oh well, I've got one more song to go. I hope you like this one." And, you know, I was being a little sarcastic. Said, "I've got one more, so I hope you like this one." You know, it's about children being taken away from their families. And I sang "Took the Children Away," and after I sang that, it was still silence for a long time. And I thought, "Oh well, I won't be doing this again." It looks like. And I'm about to walk off stage, and it was quite surreal, really. You hear this applause, and someone started clapping somewhere, and then somebody else, and it just built upon wave of this applause, and it was quite amazing until, I don't know, I was almost, if you can imagine a wave, a tidal wave coming down on somebody, you know, it just swamped me. And that's the best way to explain it, I think. And I walked, you know, I held my guitar in the air, and I said, "Well, they did like it." And I walked off, yeah. That was it.
Must have been a great feeling, though.
It was. When it was strange how it happened, you know, like just sort of like built, you know, the applause just built, like I said, I would just wave upon wave, and it just bang, it poured down over me, and it felt good. You know, it felt good because I don't know. Like I said, you don't really know what people are going to think about your songs when they hear them, and so I think that was justification for me. You know, but it was a great feeling. Yeah.
Everyone's memories differ slightly about how many songs Archie played before Took the Children Away that night and what they were. That's the passing of time for you. But everyone is on the same page about the visceral response Archie sparked from the crowd with just his guitar and impossibly soulful voice. Here's Paul.
We only had a 20-minute set for him. And if I remember rightly, he just did 2 songs, the long songs. Manyana, which is a long one. And then They Took the Children Away. He finished with it. And he finished the song, and there was dead silence. And Archie thought that he just bombed. He just sort of started to walk off. But it was just that the silence was just the audience sort of gathering themselves after hearing this song. You know, they were stunned. And then as Archie walked off, the applause started to build and just got bigger and bigger and bigger. It was amazing. I got chills up the back of my neck. I was watching from the side of the stage, and it got an incredible reaction. The writer Martin Flanagan was there that night too, and I know he wrote a beautiful piece about it, about what happened that night, and I think it was maybe published in The Age. He used to write for The Age at that time.
Paul actually quoted a section of Martin Flanagan's review in his sterling 2010 autobiography, How to Make Gravy, on page 376. It went like this. When he finished his performance, there was no sound in that vast auditorium, no sound at all. He thought he had failed. He started to walk from the stage, and the applause began running after him. This man who had done something magical, raising the darkness of the past, telling it in truth, but with a largeness that excluded no one. And the applause was building and building like the crest of a wave, But when the wave broke and the applause which was supposed to sweep him up crashed to an empty stage, he was gone. Sisters Vicar and Linda Bull are these days also institutions of the Australian music scene in their own right, recently racking up their first national #1 album after a long and fruitful career. But back then they were just setting out on their voyage, best known as the vibrant backing singers for Joe Camilleri's band, the Black Sorrows. They would in time become staples of the Paul Kelly concert experience as trusted members of his live band, but 30 years ago, when they were asked by Paul to contribute backing vocals to some songs on Archie's Charcoal Lane album, that was their first time working together. Here's their memories of seeing Archie supporting Paul that night, kicking off with Linda.
We're sitting there in the full Hamer Hall, and it was silent. And Archie walked on with his guitar and plugged in, started playing, and it was really quiet because he really took his time. I think he was nervous. He seemed really calm, but I think he was nervous after talking to him years later. Started playing, took the children away, and I mean, I think Vicar and I both looked at each other and went, oh my goodness me, listen to his voice. You could really hear a pin drop. And everyone was on his side, and he played the song and no one said anything. It was quiet, deathly silence actually. And I think everyone was stunned, of what we just heard, not just his voice, but the song, the power of the song. No one really had talked about that before, not that I'd heard of. And Archie, I think, thought it bombed. So he just got his guitar and plugged it and took off. And then as he was sort of walking just about off the side of the stage, everyone went crazy. The whole place erupted, and it was just this thunderous applause in Hamer Hall. And everyone was kind of like, everyone had goosebumps, and it was like yesterday. And he just knocked everybody's socks off. It was a very emotional moment. We knew someone important had arrived on the scene. We knew he was a very, very humble man, and it was just made all the more powerful because it's delivered it so simply and from the heart, and I don't think Melbourne's ever been the same again. Yeah, on the music scene, really.
Linda's sister Vicar has similar memories of that fateful night.
It was very moving. It was very powerful. It was very emotional.
Yeah.
I think about Archie, just how, like, what a quiet soul he is. He's and he's always been like that, and he's incredibly funny as well. When you can really have a great laugh with him. But yeah, when he's on stage, he's very still, and that's what I like about Archie. And I think that is more powerful than jumping around, like a blue ass fly,
Paul's booking agent Gerard, who's seen more gigs than he could poke his stick at, also remembers Archie opening for Paul that night being a momentous occasion.
I was there. It was an absolutely extraordinary show. It's something that you sort of read references to things like that and to reactions to certain artists when they do a show. And I actually got to see it and experience it, and it was just mind-blowing. You still sort of get shivers when you sort of cast your mind back and think about it. What happened was Archie came on as a special guest, and I'm not sure if he even got announced, because generally, that didn't really happen. You didn't have stage announcements or anything like that. So it was a sold-out show at Hamer Hall, or the Melbourne Concert Hall as it was known then. And Archie just walked out on stage, and people were going, well, who's this guy? And he performed 3 songs, and the last song was Took the Children Away. And by then, him just playing with his guitar, the room had fallen silent, and people were going, this is insane. So he does the song, and as legend has it, he walks off the stage, and slowly you hear this incredible reaction, people standing ovation, people in tears. And I think from reading bits and pieces from what Archie was saying, he had no idea about this. He thought, I hope I did okay. Classic reaction from Archie. And it all went from there. And then, of course, the record label Mushroom Simon Bayet's, Eleanor Mackay, the publishing company with Ian James and Linda Basides. They all took Archie under their wing, and what came out of that is probably one of the greatest records that's been released in this country, Charcoal Lane.
But there's a little bit of water to go under the bridge yet before Charcoal Lane becomes a reality. Paul remembers not seeing Archie again that night of the gig, but hitting him up about possibly recording together soon afterwards.
We went on stage straight as Archie came off. So, and by the time we'd finished our show, he was gone. So then we tracked him down after that and asked if he was maybe interested in making a record.
So there you have it. The stage is set. Archie has been discovered by Steve Connolly and Paul Kelly, blown away their crowd, and now they're asking him to record an album of his songs with them. Every musician's absolute dream. There's only one problem. Archie doesn't really want to do it. He enjoyed his work in health services at the hostel. He felt he was making a difference that way, and leaving those people in the lurch to chase some far-fetched musical dream seemed wrong or selfish. When he told his wife, Ruby Hunter, that he was planning on knocking back Paul's offer, she famously rebuked him, saying, "It's not all about you, Archie Roach. How many blackfellas you reckon get to record an album?" And with that, he was in.
I was just happy doing what I was doing. I was, like I say, I was working at the George White Shelter, a hostel in Fitzroy. A lot of the clients were my old drinking mates. And, I was happy doing that. The money was pretty good. So I just thought that maybe it's something in my life. It's just don't really need it at the moment. I'm not interested in really. I mean, it's just not really me. So I thought, and that's when Ruby famously put her hands on her hips and looked at me and said, "It's not all about you, Archie, right?" And a true word never spoken. So it's never really about me. And in community, it's about people. It's about community. It's about do whatever we can to uplift and bring people. And if you're doing well and going good, try to bring people along with you, hopefully, and so that they'll be okay too. And that's what she meant, Like we looked up to footy stars, Polly Farmer, Yvonne Goolagong, Nolan Rose when he won the World Bantamweight Championship, and people like that, Uncle Jimmy Little, and there's a sense, and so yeah, that's what she was talking about. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe somebody else will think, I'm doing an album like Archie Roach. Okay, Archie Roach did it. I could do it. Something like that, yeah.
Archie, and all of us, tragically lost Ruby Hunter when she passed away in 2010. We have Archie's express permission to talk about her in this podcast. And although she herself would go on to become the first Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander woman to ever sign to a major label, kickstarting her own brilliant musical career in the process, it was her persuasiveness in getting Archie to back himself in and record Charcoal Lane that's arguably her most important ever contribution to Australian music, changing both of their lives forever in the process. We'll leave episode 1 with the Charcoal Lane song Beautiful Child that Archie remembers playing first that fateful night opening for Paul Kelly in Melbourne.
Oh, my beautiful child, my beautiful child, the brightest of stars, couldn't match your sweet smile, but you grew up too soon, far beyond your young years. Now all that remains is your memory and tears. You were always to blame, and they put you through hell. Then they locked you away in a dark, lonely cell. But you weren't really bad, just a little bit wild. Now they'll hound you no more, oh my beautiful child. Beautiful, beautiful child, now you are free. Free from this heartache and pain and misery. When they found your body that day, some said you'd smile. And I wish I was with you right now, my beautiful child. You'd been locked up before, but you always came back with your head held high, and so proud to be black. But the last time they came, how could I have known, when they took you away, that you'd never come home. Yeah, they pushed you around, 'cause your skin wasn't white. And although you were gentle, you learned how to fight, and you fought all your life. No, you didn't fail, but you deserve better than to die in some jail. Ooh, beautiful, beautiful child, now you are free. Free from this heartache and pain and misery. When they found your body that day, some said you'd smile. And I wish I was with you right now, my beautiful child. And I wish I was with you right now, my beautiful child.
Thanks as always to our network partners Yamaha Headphones, and thanks to you for checking out the first episode of Rewind's look back at Charcoal Lane. Please stick around for the rest of this super important Australian story.
Rewind with Steve Bell is a euphony podcast produced by Craig Trewick and Andrew Mars, recorded by Zig Parker. Theme music by Dulla Bar. For more euphony podcasts, visit our website, Spotify, Apple, Acast, or wherever you get your podcasts.